Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear friends and participants. Today, once again, we'll be studying a surah of the Quran as we have been doing so in the last couple of sessions. I do keep reminding that in order to understand the Quranic surah, it is always essential to have this background knowledge that as far as the Quran is concerned, it was revealed in a specific background, it addressed specific entities, and the Meccan surahs, thus, for example, the surah that we're going to study today, which is Surah Rahman, it was revealed in Mecca, and the Meccan surahs are primarily addressed to the idolaters of Arabia because they were the nation of the Prophet, and almost two-thirds of the Quran relates to them. And in order to understand how the Quran speaks to them and why certain things are brought up, it's always useful to have knowledge of the fact that how these idolaters believed, what they believed in, what was their background, and what exactly were their beliefs. For example, they doubted being created again, and at the same time, they were circumspect, they were very cautious, and they thought that if ever they are going to be created again, then their deities that they worship or associate with God will save them from God's punishment. Then, of course, they also had this belief that as far as angels are concerned, these are daughters of God, and they used to worship angels as daughters of God, and they would regard them to be the favored ones of God who would procure for them nearness with God when, if ever the hereafter is going to arrive. They were also incriminated with various forms of religious innovations. We also know that in Mecca, in the house of the Almighty, the Kaaba, there were in excess of 350 idols which were placed there, and these people used to worship them. But do remember that they started off as a progeny of Abraham when he settled them in the land of Arabia. All of them were monotheists. So polytheism actually crept into them later on. But as far as their beginning was concerned, which started off with Abraham settling his son Ishmael, his eldest son Ishmael, in Arabia. Of course, it began with the creed of monotheism, but slowly polytheism crept into their beliefs. And by the time the Prophet arrived on the scene, they were fully embraced and engulfed with various beliefs of polytheism. So, of course, the Quran also addressed these beliefs. At the same time, these people had their contact with supernatural deities or supernatural beings, I can say. Thus, for example, they had contact with the jinn. Now, the jinn, of course, we know that they are a separate creation of the Almighty, and the Quran tells us that just as prophets and messengers have been sent amongst mankind, the Almighty has also sent his prophets amongst the jinn kind. And they shall also be held accountable on the day of judgment for their deeds. Although we don't have a lot of details, but it does seem that just as human beings have been given the freedom to choose their lives and the freedom to choose right and wrong, similarly, the jinn kind have also been given some similar traits. And at the same time, because we know that amongst them there are pious jinn and there are evil jinn, and these evil jinn used to have contact with the Quraysh, or in particular with the soothsayers or the astrologers of the ancient times. They were called soothsayers, and they would actually give them all sorts of information, mixtures of lies and truths, and then they would boast that they have the knowledge of the unseen. So one of the reasons that the Quran actually addresses the jinn together with mankind in this surah is the fact that these jinn had been in regular touch with the people of the Quraysh, and as I said, especially with their soothsayers, and they had their beliefs very similar in certain areas to what people held. And it was on this occasion that it was deemed appropriate by the Almighty that the jinn should also be addressed and certain realities should be communicated to them. So this is a surah that we're going to study. It addresses jinn kind and mankind together as if they are two creations which the Almighty is addressing in a way that they are being told of how they should actually behave and what they are actually doing and what are the changes that they should make in their lives, and how actually they are forgetting that one day, like everyone else, they shall be held accountable before the Almighty. Accountability is something which is going to take place for every single person. So in this surah, we'll find the Almighty trying to make them understand that there is going to be a hereafter, there is going to be a qiyamah, a day of judgment. They have to prepare themselves for that day of judgment. And because of the fact that the jinn kind and mankind amongst those who populated Arabia in those times, they thought that, well, how can everyone be recreated, and how is it that the Almighty has record of each and every deed of a person? So you'll find that this surah actually telling people that if the Almighty can do such and such things, if He has created mankind for the first time, or if He has created this huge universe, how can it be difficult for Him at all to recreate them? And how can it be difficult at all, especially when He was successful in creating mankind for the first time, or He was creating the heavens and the earth for the first time? If He has created them for the first time, of course, creating them a second time should not be a problem at all for Him. So now let's begin with the surah and see how these themes that I have just discussed with you, these motifs, have been brought up by the Qur'an. And one more thing, perhaps, that I'd like to remind you of is what we actually did study some months ago. I remember when we were talking about the fact how the Quran has been arranged. So I think some of you would be remembering that we had discussed this fact that the Quran has been arranged in 7 chapters, and each of the surahs of the Quran actually they occur in prayers, and or we can say mostly these surahs occur in prayer. There are of course exceptions. So just to remind you that Surah Rahman actually belongs to the 6th chapter of the Quran. The 6th chapter of the Quran begins with the 50th surah, which is Surah Qaf. So Surah Rahman is the 55th surah, and this chapter ends on the 66th surah, which is Surah Tahrim. And as far as this chapter is concerned, we have Meccan surahs, and then we have Medinan surahs. The Meccan surahs end on the 56th surah, which is the next surah, Surah Waqia, and then we have the Medinan surahs. So I've also discussed this, that as far as the Meccan surahs are concerned, mostly the idolaters or the polytheists of Arabia have been addressed. And as far as the Medinan surahs are concerned, you'll find, of course, Muslims or believers who had now found themselves under a state being ruled by the Prophet Muhammad being addressed, and at the same time the people of the book being addressed. So in Mecca, the discussion was basically with the idolaters, and in Medina, the discussion of the Quran was basically with the people of the book, and of course people who had turned Muslims, and it was needed that they be educated and instructed as far as Islam is concerned. So remember that Surah Rahman is the 55th surah. It belongs to the 6th chapter. And another thing that you might want to know, which I just discussed, is that these surahs occur in pairs. So the pair of Surah Rahman is the 54th surah, which is Surah Qamar. And some of you might be remembering that the very first surah with which we started off studying the text of the Quran was Surah Qamar. So you can relate Surah Qamar, which is the 54th surah, with Surah Rahman, and together they form a whole. So the surahs of the Quran, they occur in pairs. So Surah Qamar and Surah Rahman, they are counterparts to one another. We can call them duals. We can call them a member of the pair that they constitute. And also remember that as far as pairs are concerned, they complement one another. At times, something is discussed in a concise way in one surah, and its paired surah will have the same thing being discussed in a more detailed way. So each of the members of a pair, they complement one another, they supplement one another, and a lot of things can be understood if we study the surah pairs in unison, together with each other. Okay, now let's begin Surah Rahman. As you can see, the first paragraph or the first part, which consists of the first 4 verses, it reads: Ar-Rahmanu 'allama al-Qur'an, khalaqa al-insan, 'allamahu al-bayan.
In the name of God, the most gracious, the ever merciful. The merciful taught the Qur'an because he has created a human being, taught him speech.
So thank you, Zara, for this translation. You see, the first part or the first paragraph of this surah actually tells us that the reason that the Almighty is teaching people the Quran is that He has given people the ability or the faculty of speech. And the faculty of speech actually signifies the faculty of intellect. So the most merciful who has taught us the Quran, the reason that he has taught mankind the Quran or khalaq al insan, and then taught him the Quran is that the Almighty has blessed people with intellect, and instead of warning them through various punishments, the best way to warn them about the hereafter would be through the Quran, which is, of course, something through which they can learn what's going to happen in the future. One thing that you might like to remember here is that the creation of mankind, as well as teaching them with the faculty of speech, has been ascribed to this attribute of God, which is Ar-Rahman, of course, which can be translated as the most merciful. So the fact that people have been taught the Quran is a manifestation of the most merciful nature of the Almighty. Similarly, the creation of mankind itself is something which is a manifestation of God's mercy. So this mercy and this affection which God has for people has made him create mankind, and at the same time, he has not left them without guidance. Of course, he has given them intellect. He's given them with intuition and innate guidance, which has a very big support for them to guide them. And at the same time, wherever that intellect falls short, the Almighty has given them the treasure of Wahi, which is, of course, the Quran. So the Quran basically is a gift of God, is a gift of His mercy. And because of the fact that mankind has been given this intellect and this understanding, so therefore the Almighty wanted people, instead of telling them that, or maybe warning them through signs like earthquakes and various other natural disasters, He preferred that, first of all, people should learn that this is something that they can understand and appreciate through reasoning, and which their intellect can actually grasp. Okay, now let's move on to the next part. It says, "Ash-shamsu wal-qamaru bihusbanin wan-najmu wash-shajaru yasjudan was-samaa'a rafa'aha wa wada'a al-mizan alla tatghaw fil mizan wa aqimu al-wazna bil-qisti wa la tukhsiru al-mizan."
You wanna sign, so observe that the sun and the moon pursue an ordered course, and the stars and trees all bow down in adoration. And he raised high the sky and placed the balance in it, so that you too, in your circle of authority, should not transgress that balance, and weigh justly and do not measure less.
Thank you, Umar, for this translation. So you see, as you can clearly observe, that as far as the surah is concerned, it starts off after that introductory paragraph with this fact that people of those times, when they were warned that the Almighty is going to punish them for their misdeeds, not only in this world but the hereafter, they would typically come forward and ask for a sign of that punishment, and they would say, "Okay, if there is some punishment looming over our heads, it's hovering over our heads, send it to us and we'll face it." And the Almighty in reply would tell them, and this is the motive or the topic which is discussed in many surahs of the Quran, that He would not like to send that punishment, because as far as reminding people is concerned, people should, instead of asking for that punishment as a sign of greater punishment, why don't people observe their own surroundings? Look at the sun and the moon, how they pursue an ordered course, which of course refers to their discipline. Similarly, the stars and trees all bow down in adoration. Stars, of course, when they rise and they set, they give this feeling that they are under control of a huge system. Trees also, the way it's their shadows actually, they lengthen, and as if they are prostrating, and then they withdraw themselves. Again, this very subtle argument in favor of the fact that they are being controlled, and there is someone who is putting them into the service of mankind. So what the Quran is actually telling us, that the sun, the moon, the stars, the trees, all these natural phenomena, they are all under the subservience of the Almighty. They are under the discipline of the Almighty. There's not a single second of delay of a certain phenomena coming to the fore if the time for that has arisen. And not only that, another thing which is then brought to our notice is look at the heavens, the sky, and how again the sky is a structure which does not have any fissures in it. It does not have any flaw. Now this is actually uh, here pointed out with the fact that there is a balance in it. Balance here actually refers to the fact that the whole structure of this universe is being held in a way that there's nothing which is actually holding it. There are invisible columns which might be holding it, but as far as that order is concerned, in which it does not fall down on us, we know that clearly this doesn't happen because of that balance and that system to which it is subservient. And again, you see that the reason that these phenomena of nature are pointed out is that if they are also following a certain course, they are also being disciplined in their own, they follow certain discipline in their own lives. The Almighty says, "Well, look at these phenomena that I have created, and they are follow this discipline, and they teach us by following this discipline that mankind, it's in its own circle of authority, should also behave similarly." So you see, the Arabs of the times of the Prophet, of course, and even before them, we know that they were basically tribal nations. They were living in open lands. They were people who were very close to nature. So you'll find the Quran actually arguing and reasoning with them on the basis of, the various phenomena and various elements of nature. Today, as you can see, most of us are living in cities, and it's all urbanized. And at times, we don't even catch the sight of these natural phenomena or these physical manifestations of God's creation. So we at times don't even look at the stars, or we don't even observe how the sky is above us, because simply we don't get time, or at even it happens that the atmosphere is polluted. But this was not the case in those times. So you'll find the Quran arguing in favor of certain beliefs by using these natural phenomena, because in those times people were so close to nature that for them, whenever something would be argued on the basis of these natural phenomena, it would really make itself very effective. And then it says, وَقِيمُوا الْوَزْنَ بِالْقِسْطِ وَلَا تُخْسِرُوا الْمِيزَانَ, that if these things are following a certain ordered course, they are vigilant and they are diligent in all this, then remember that this is something which mankind must learn from these natural phenomena, and they also must weigh justly and not measure less, of course, pointing out to the fact that honesty and truth is something on which the whole system of this universe is dependent upon. If there is no honesty, if there is no honoring of the fact that whatever you're giving other people as merchandise, and it's not according to what they are being paid in cash or kind, then this would clearly show that there is this disruption which is taking place, and the Almighty does not, of course, tolerate such disruption. So basically, the phenomena, these phenomena which are around us, they are used in favor of arguing the fact that our own diligence, our own sense of obedience has been called to and made an appeal to, and we are asked to actually learn a lesson from these phenomena. Okay, so the next part, of course, is a continuation. We don't have a new paragraph; it's still a continuation of the previous or the current paragraph. It says, وَالْأَرْضَ وَضَعَهَا لِلْأَنَامِ فِيهَا فَاكِهَةٌ وَالنَّخْلُ ذَاتُ الْأَكْمَامِ وَالْحَبُّ ذُو الْعَصْفِ وَالرَّيْحَانُ فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ خلق الإنسان من صلصال كالفخار وخلق الجان من مارج من نار فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان.
And he has laid out the earth for his creatures. In it are fruits and date palms whose fruits are in coverings, and chaff-covered grain and scented flowers. Then, O jinn and men, which of your Lord's majesties will you deny? He created human beings from clay, which rings like its dry pieces, and the jinn from the flame of fire. Then, O jinn and men, which of your Lord's majesties will you deny?
So thank you for this, Zoya. You can see, my dear friends and participants, that there is now this introduction of a verse which you'll find being repeated all over in this surah, and that is فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ, translated as, O jinn and men, which of your Lord's majesty will you deny? So this is a recurring verse, and the reason that you'll find it to be recurring and being repeated in the next in the remaining part of the surah is that when certain phenomena are being pointed to, and in spite of the fact that the person might be convinced how effective they are, but he or she is still out of personal interest or arrogance or many other things, is not able to, or is not inclined to pay heed. So this repetitive verse is actually trying to remind them. It's like warning them, well, look at these things that are right around you. And in spite of these super phenomena, in spite of these inviting sights, which make you believe that there is someone who has created this earth, who has populated this earth, and who has created mankind from clay. And of course, if mankind has been created from clay, then not only mankind but jinn, the jinn folk have also been created. And the difference is that while man's creation started off with clay, the jinn are created from fire. And this is a basic difference in the substance of creation. But at the same time, as far as their intellect is concerned, as far as looking towards the fact is concerned that there is someone who has created them, both these creations are equal. And again, as you can see, that our attention is being focused. So in the previous part we just discussed in our previous slide, the attention was drawn towards the heavens and how there is no fissure in it. It's how perfectly they are balanced, and how everything is being governed by a system. And now this is extended to the earth. You see, you observe the skies, you observe the heavens, and then you look down and you observe your own earth, and you can clearly see that everything on earth is in a system and is nurturing mankind in various ways. And again, we are being asked to look at these things and reflect that are these things being self-created? Have they been self-created, or is it that someone has brought them into existence? So once again, refresh, my dear friends and participants, in your minds that the addressees here are again the idolaters of Mecca, who doubted being created again, and who would raise a lot of objections and questions that why at all then can people be created or should be created. And they would also regard this creation to be a far-fetched thing, because it's such a huge thing to happen again. And it is to them that these verses are telling that, remember, when if the Almighty has created a system for their benefit, for their comfort, then the Almighty is not going to leave them without being held accountable for what gifts and blessings God has given them. So whenever you are reading this surah, always refresh in your minds who the addressees are and what their beliefs are, because this is how you will connect with the Quran, by understanding that the foremost addressees of the Quran had certain beliefs, and the Quran is actually addressing them. And it is through them that we are also getting guidance. So at times you might realize, or you might think that, well, these are not our beliefs. We already believe in the Quran and we already believe in a lot of things. And how does this relate to us? So the answer is that it relates to you by telling you that the history of the Quran, in which it was presented and how people actually reacted to this revelation, that has also been recorded in the Quran. So this part is actually that record which you can see is being preserved by the Quran, that when it presented its invitation towards these idolaters, then certain things were argued with through, and amongst them was, of course, as I said, these elements of nature, and how they would react, or these idolaters would react. And again, the Quran would actually caution them and prod them that look at these phenomena, and in spite of the observation of these phenomena, you're still denying the fact that you would be recreated, and still denying the fact that there is God alone, who, in spite of these variations, and many of these phenomena are they are conflicting. So the earth is something which is absolutely opposite to the heavens. So one thing these idolaters had done, they had created separate gods for separate phenomena. So they would have a god of fire, they would have a god of the earth, a god of the sky, God of, similarly, all these phenomena, and at times the phenomena themselves assume the shape of a God. Like, for example, the sun. The sun was the supreme God. So they are being told that this universe is being governed by a single intention, and that single intention has brought harmony in this discord. And so, therefore, remember that one single Almighty is what who is one is the person or is the being who is governing this universe. Okay, the same thing, the same theme is now continuing as we move ahead. So it says, Rabbul Mashriqaini wa Rabbul Maghribain, Fabiayyi ala'i Rabbikuma tukazziban, Marajal Bahraini yaltaqiyan, Bainahuma barzakhun la yabghiyan, Fabiayyi ala'i Rabbikuma tukazziban, يخرج منهما اللؤلؤ والمرجان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان.
He alone in the Lord of the east until both of its borders, and he alone is the Lord of the west until both of its borders. Then, O jinn and men, which is your Lord's majesties will you deny? He let loose two oceans, both strike one another, yet between them is a barrier that they cannot cross. Then, O jinn and men, which of your Lord's majesties will you deny? Pearls and corals come out of both. Then, O jinn and men, which of your Lord's majesties will you deny?
So thank you, Simar, for this translation. Again, you see, the surah is further extending its ambit of argument and including other phenomena of nature as well. So it says Rabbul Mashriqain wa Rabbul Maghribain. So translated typically or literally, Mashriqain means the two Mashriqs or the two easts, and Maghribain would mean the two wests. So primarily, it's the if you look at the directions in three dimensions, you'll find that the east has two borders, just like this, and the west has two borders, just like this. So what the verse is actually telling us is that He's the Almighty is the Lord of the east and the west, of both borders of the east and the west. You'll not find anyone else who is governing them, and therefore there's no point in accepting or acknowledging other deities, because He's the one who is governing both these directions. Of course, this is a further insight in the fact that as far as the system of this universe is concerned, don't think that they have separate deities. A single God is governing them. And the other phenomena, which can be observed even today, is that when two oceans meet, like for example, one of them is sour and the other one is sweet, you can still find. You can go to the internet and Google and see how when the two oceans meet, there is a barrier between the oceans, and that barrier does not make the waters of either of the two cross over into the other. And if the water of one is sweet and the other is sour, it stays like this, and there is that invisible barrier. And this is a remarkable phenomenon of nature, that they don't intermingle. And similarly, you'll find that pearls and corals come out of both. Formerly, people would believe that one of these, the sour and the sweet seas, one of them would produce these corals and pearls, and the other would not. But research has shown that pearls and corals, they come out of both the sour and the sweet oceans, so to speak. And when I talk of being sour and sweet, of course, I refer to the water of these oceans. And again, now the discourse has now shifted towards some of the phenomena of nature which are a means of adornment and beautification. You see, pearls and corals, they are used for decoration. They are used for telling us that the Almighty has not just created us, but He has created this universe or this whole world in a way that He has embellished it, He has beautified it. And this again shows how the refined taste of the Almighty is there for us. It's basically is to quench our aesthetic taste. So if we have that aesthetic taste in us, it's not being left unquenched. It has been given its fodder. So just as we have thirst and we are given water, so if we have this thirst towards aesthetic things, I mean, we have that aesthetic taste, and a person who has an aesthetic taste or a sense of appreciation of beauty, he or she would like to witness beauty, so that taste is quenched. And precisely this is what the Quran says here. And you can clearly see once again that recurring verse of فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ, which of your Lord's majesties will you deny, addressing both man and jinn. Again, it occurs after every phenomena is pointed to. Again, as I said, the purpose is to prod and caution and to shake people and to jolt people that they have to think they are doing something wrong and they must revisit their concepts. Okay. وَلَهُ الْجَوَارِ الْمُنْشَآتُ فِي الْبَحْرِ كَالْأَعْلَامِ فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ كُلُّ مَنْ عَلَيْهَا فَانٍ وَيَبْقَى وَجْهُ رَبِّكَ ذُو الْجَلَالِ وَالْإِكْرَامِ فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ.
To him belong these ships that are like mountains rising above the ocean. Then, O jinn and men, which of your Lord's majesties will you deny? All that lives on the earth is destined to die, and only the glorious and majestic person of your Lord will abide forever. Then, O jinn and men, which of your Lord's majesties will you deny?
Thank you, Sine, for reading out this translation. So another phenomena which is now brought to our notice is the fact that these huge ships, which would sail in the ocean. Remember, these ships are not something which are new. Ships, even of the times of the Prophet or even before them, they were constructed and they would sail through the ocean. And again, the point being made is that these are like mountains. They are high as mountains, and in spite of the fact that they have so much weight and they are a huge structure, they still float on these oceans, which again is like a miracle. It's one of the majesties of God that something very thin, something very small might drown in the sea, but a ship, a huge ship, it keeps afloat. And those of you who have studied science, of course, would be knowing how the Archimedes principle helps in keeping such things afloat. And of course, the Quran is not referring to that. It's just referring to the fact that this is how the Almighty has made this whole system. That you are, it's like these ships are like mountains which rise above the ocean. And if the phenomena is the Archimedes principle, then of course this is something which is being used to our own benefit. And it's like the Almighty owning these huge mountains. And the reason that the Almighty has actually ascribed these ships to be owned by Himself is the fact that actually mankind has constructed or has been able to construct these ships from the talent and from the ability which God has given him. So therefore, it's like saying that it is actually God to whom these products of that talent belong to. So this is just an inscription that we also use. And finally, something which is very important is pointed to, that all of us are destined to die. This is the only thing that all of us are absolutely sure of, because we see people dying every day and we see that they don't come back. And this is again used by the Quran to tell us that, look, everyone is going to die, and if the only being who is going to remain is the Almighty Himself. And if that is the case, then surely He will recreate these people who die because of the fact that He has blessed them, or He had blessed them with so many things that now they must be held accountable. And therefore, the jinn and men, they must wake up to this and must not deny this all-important aspect. يسأله من في السماوات والأرض كل يوم هو في شأن فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان.
Whatever is in the heavens and the earth ask for their needs from Him alone. At all times His Majesty has a newer manifestation. Then, O jinn and men, which of your Lord's majesties will you deny?
Thank you, Sona. Again, you can see from this a very common observation that comes to our notice is pointed out, and that is that whenever we need something, we are actually asking from God. Why? Because even if we are not asking from Him, or we are, as was the case in those times, that these people would invoke their deities, their idols, and they would ask for them, from them. The Almighty says that whether they ask from their deities or whether they ask from anyone else, in fact, it finally turns to Him. They are asking from Him. So they must not forget that He is the person who is fulfilling all their needs. They might be using someone as a mediator or as an intercessor, which of course is non-existent. But ultimately, all their petitions, all their supplications, they reach the Almighty. And the Almighty, of course, is in a new majesty, is in a different manifestation in every second. Of course, this is something that's what we have been told in the Quran, because there are so many people who ask this question, or at least have this question in mind, that what is the Almighty doing these days? Well, how is He governing? Everything is so set and everything is so precise that what exactly are His engagements, His everyday engagements? And it is in this verse that the Quran actually briefly answers, or rather concisely answers this question, that every instant His Majesty has a different manifestation, which means actually that something different is being created and something different is going on. And so this power of creativity of the Almighty is being referred to. That don't think that God Almighty, once He has created this universe and these people and all the creatures that you can see, He now is aloof and He has no concern, or He's just sitting there and doing nothing. No, that is not the case. Kulla yawmin huwa fi shan. Every single instant you'll find that something new is being created, something new is being brought into existence, and that is how the Almighty is manifesting His power of creativity in practical terms. Okay, سنفرغ لكم أيها الثقلان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان يا معشر الجن والإنس إن استطعتم أن تنفذوا من أقطار السماوات والأرض فانفذوا لا تنفذون إلا بسلطان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان يرسل عليكما شواظ من نار ونحاس فلا تنتصران فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان.
O mighty groups, we are about to find time for you. Then speak up, which of your Lord's majesties will you deny? O groups of men and jinn, if you have power to escape from the confines of the heavens and earth, then try to escape. You will not be able to do so. This requires permission. Then which of your Lord's majesties will you deny? A flame of fire would be hurled at you and molten brass, and you would not be able to shield yourself. Then which of your Lord's majesties will you deny?
Thank you, Simon, for this reading. Again, you can see that the Almighty, again, is like a dialogue which is being conducted. We've referred to this aspect also in one of our previous lessons, that the Quran, you'll find a dialogue is being conducted between the Almighty and the people who are present in Arabia of those times. And of course, this dialogue changes. At times, the Almighty is speaking, and the spoken to are, as in this case, the jinn and mankind, and specifically the idolaters amongst Arabia. And at times, the speaker changes to other entities. So keep this aspect in mind, and you'll find how effectively the Quran employs this dialogue and this debate, and how this back and forth nature of conversation makes you come close to what is happening actually. So it's the words when it says that, oh, mighty groups. Of course, the word mighty, of course, here refers to the fact that they might consider themselves to be mighty and strong, but not so by the Almighty Himself, because for Him it's not a problem that if He starts questioning them for whatever they have been doing, and they cannot escape this accountability in any way. And if these people try to escape from His grasp, they can try, but of course this cannot happen. So the bottom line is that a person, whether he belongs to the jinn kind or mankind, he should be prepared for that final accountability. And then one phenomena is pointed out here, and that I have been referring to earlier as well, that during the time of the Quran's revelation, these jinn and evil spirits, they would try to actually eavesdrop in that passage through which Gabriel would be bringing revelation from the Almighty to the Prophet Muhammad, and they would try to snatch it or snatch a part of it. But in the times of the revelation of the Quran, one of the arrangements which was made for the protection of the divine message was that whenever they would try to eavesdrop, or whenever they would try to snatch some part of that information that was being revealed, a star would be hurled at them. A star, of course, these shooting stars, which we call meteorites as well, they would be used, and these jinn and these evil spirits would be pelted with them. in order to draw them away. So this is precisely what is being reflected here. It says that Yursalu alaykum ashwazum min nar, a flame of fire will be hurled at you in molten grass. This particularly addresses those evil spirits and jinn who would try to eavesdrop, and this is what is being told. وَنُحَاسٌ فَلَا تَنْتَصِرَانِ, and molten brass, so that you are, it would be pelted on you, it would be hurled at you, and they would not be able to shield themselves unless, of course, they run away. So this again is something which is being told to them, that the Almighty, who has revealed this Quran in the times of the Prophet, He has completely protected His message. And you can see how powerful His authority is, that whenever this phenomena of eavesdropping or snatching part of that revelation takes place, the Almighty does not allow it to actually take place, because He actually uses these meteorites and these shooting stars to pelt away these spirits and jinn. فإذا انشقت السماء فكانت وردة كالدهان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فيومئذ لا يسأل عن ذنبه إنس ولا جان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان يعرف المجرمون بسيماهم فيؤخذ بالنواصي والأقدام فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان هذه جهنم التي يكذب بها المجرمون يطوفون بينها وبين حميم آن فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان.
Then what will happen at the time when the sky splits asunder and reddens like skin peeled off? At that time, O jinn and men, which of your Lord's majesties will you deny? Then there will be no need to ask either man or jinn of his sins. Then which of your Lord's majesties will you deny? The wrongdoers will be recognized there by their signs. Then they will be seized by the forelocks and their feet, and thrown into hell. Then which of your Lord's majesties will you deny? This is the very hell which these wrongdoers had kept denying. Now they will keep circling between it and its boiling water. Then, O jinn and men, which of your Lord's majesties will you deny?
Thank you, Ryan, for this reading. So, as is the case in most surahs of the Quran, that once arguments are given for in favor of the Day of Judgment, for example, providence, mercy, wisdom, all that we have just come across in the earlier part of the surah, in which the Almighty tells us how it is so easy for Him to create mankind once again for that accountability. Often it happens, as is the case here, that once that those arguments stand completed, a picture of the Day of Judgment is then drawn, as if this is the natural consequence, that if those arguments are true, then this is how the Day of Judgment is going to come, and this is how it's going to manifest itself. So when it says that the sky will split asunder and it reddens like skin peeled off, this is again picturization of how this world will end and the new world will come into being. And in those, when once that world comes into being, the Almighty says that there will be no need to ask from people regarding their account. What will happen is that the limbs of people, which has been explained at other instances in the Quran, that your own hands and your feet, they'll bear witness to your sins, and it will not be needed actually to ask from them what their sins are, because their limbs would testify, and the person's own forehead would actually be enough and sufficient to make him distinguish that he is the person who is a wrongdoer, and then he'll be cast into hell. And again, that hell is then portrayed that this is the hell that you were denying. Remember, again, the addressees are the times of the Prophet Muhammad, the polytheists, who thought that, well, there is not going to be any hell. If ever they are going to be punished, then that would be for a very small time, because the Almighty's daughters, who were, of course, regarded them to be deities, would actually save them. But it is as if the Day of Judgment has arrived, and they are being told, look, you were denying that you'll be saved by these deities. Where are these deities? They are no longer there. Now you will be cast into hell, and then you'll be made to move between that boiling water. Of course, the simple imagination of people in boiling water gives us the shudders, and it's so difficult to imagine. But again, as I said, this is how the Quran tells us that if people who, in spite of the fact that they know that there is one God, and they still associate partners with him, then their fate is going to be so destructive and so horrific. وَلِمَنْ خَافَ مَقَامَ رَبِّهِ جَنَّتَانِ فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ فِيهِمَا عَيْنَانِ تَجْرِيَانِ فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ فِيهِمَا مِنْ كُلِّ فَاكِهَةٍ زَوْجَانِ فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ مُتَّكِئِينَ عَلَى فُرُشٍ بَطَائِنُهَا مِنْ إِسْتَبْرَقٍ وَجَنَى الْجَنَّتَيْنِ دَانٍ.
This is the recompense for those wrongdoers, and for those who feared being brought to the presence of their Lord, there will be two orchards. Then, O jinn and men, which of your Lord's majesties will you deny? Both will have abundant branches. Then, which of your Lord's majesties will you deny? Both will be watered by two fountains. Then, which of your Lord's majesties will you deny? In them each fruit will be of different types. Then, which of your Lord's majesties will you deny? They will sit on the floors, reclining on cushions lined with thick brocade, and the fruits of both orchards will be drooping down.
So, thank you for this reading. And you can see that, as is the case of the Quran, that once the fate of the wrongdoers is depicted, many a time this happens that in opposition or as a parallel happening, the fate of the righteous is then depicted. So, one pattern that you can clearly note down in the Quran is that once arguments are cited in favor of the Day of Judgment, often the Day of Judgment is then portrayed as if the arguments have actually proven that Day of Judgment. And you find a picture that you just saw. And in that picture, you'll find both the wrongdoers and the righteous, their fate being depicted. So just in our previous paragraph or our previous slide, you could have you saw that the fate of the wrongdoers were depicted as there would be people who would be cast into hell. Now, immediately after that, you'll find the picture of the righteous, how they will enjoy the blessings of the hereafter. And again, my dear friends and participants, remember that the way these favors are mentioned again has a lot to do with what the Arabs of the times of Prophet Muhammad would like to be given when they would think of something as a favor of God or as a gift of God. So, living in the countryside, having orchards and not one but two of them, and having fountains which are being watered by having orchards which are being watered by these fountains, and then having all types of fruits in them, and the fruit is all bent down so that it is in the easy reach of the people, and you are sitting and reclining on cushions with thick brocade. So this is a complete picture of how the Arabs would relish when they would think of God's favors. So one thing that you can also note in the Quran is that the picture of paradise which is presented is something which is very familiar to what the Arab people would think of when they would imagine the prizes and the gifts of God. Again, this should not mean that as people today who are living in urban societies and we have our own picture of the gifts and blessings of God. So what we can see is that similarly, as far as we are concerned, we will get whatever we have in our mind or whatever we desire. And the reason that the Almighty has not expressed something which Arabs were not used to is simply because they were the foremost addressees. For example, today, if the Quran would have been revealed, the picture of paradise would have been something very, very close to our things that we relish. For example, golf courses, or for example, racing cars, or all the things that we would like to indulge in. So things of indulgence, they change with time. But the Quran portrays those things which were more closer to the Arab imagination. And then it leaves us by saying, by saying words to the effect that each person will get what he or she would desire, so that every person till the Day of Judgment who might be having a different concept of the prizes and gifts is given this assurance that don't worry, for you will be whatever you desire. Okay, فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ فِيهِنَّ قَاصِرَاتُ الطَّرْفِ لَمْ يَطْمِثْهُنَّ إِنسٌ قَبْلَهُمْ وَلَا جَانٌ فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ كَأَنَّهُنَّ الْيَاقُوتُ وَالْمَرْجَانُ فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ هل جزاء الإحسان إلا الإحسان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان.
Then which of your lords' majesties will you deny? In them will be maidens having bashful eyes whom neither man nor jinn would have touched before. Then which of your lords' majesties will you deny? So beautiful as if they are like rubies and corals. Then which of your lords' majesties will you deny? What can be the reward of virtue except virtue? Then which of your lords' majesties will you deny?
Thank you, Nida, for reading out this translation. So, folks, my dear friends and participants, the picture of paradise is incomplete without a companion. So, this is a very often motif of the Quran, that it presents a picture in which men are told that they'll have companions, and these companions, of course, will be women who would be very, very modest and very bashful and very pure, and they'll be beautiful as well, not only from their outside but inside as well. So this is a picture of paradise in which people would be living as companions. And one of the reasons that why the Quran mentions women for men, of course, raises that this question, that why is it that that women are not mentioned in a way that they are told that the gift of a companion like a man would be given to them. Well, this has more to do with the style of the Quran. In the ancient Semitic languages, the way entities would be addressed would be that generally men would be addressed, and women would be included. They would be thought to be included in every such gift. So, of course, this would vice versa also mean that just as men would have good companions in the form of women who would be beautiful, women would have good companions in the form of men who would be handsome and not only beautiful from outside, but beautiful from inside as well. And this has been mentioned in some other places in the Quran, in which it is said, for example, that at-tayyibatu lit-tayyibin, which means pure men would be for pure women, and pure women would be for pure men. So the picture of paradise, as I said, that is being given here, that started off a few verses earlier on, is now culminating in the form that besides all these things like these fountains and these orchards and this countryside look that you might be that you might so relish, uh, besides that, we will also have companions. So you see, whether we are a man or whether we are a woman, all of us, we have that feeling of incompleteness. We just have that urge to live in pairs, to live as companions. So that companionship again is something the Almighty tells us that would be provided to its utmost. Both of both companions, man and woman, both of them, they will be very pure. They'll be very, very good looking from inside and outside, as the verses say, and some of the ones that are just coming up. And this section actually concludes by saying, Hal jaza'ul ihsan illa ihsan, that what is the reward of virtue except virtue? That if people were virtuous in their previous lives, then of course this is in line with justice, that they should be rewarded in the same way. So Hal jaza'ul ihsan illa ihsan, it's another a manifestation of God's justice. Okay. ومن دونهما جنتان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان مدهامتان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فيهما عينان نضاختان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فيهما فاكهة والنخل والرمان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فيهن خيرات حسان.
And besides these, there will be 2 other orchards also. Then, O jinn and men, which of your lord's majesties will you deny? Both will be dense and luxuriantly green. Then which of your lord's majesties will you deny? 2 gushing fountains will flow in each. Then which of your lord's majesties will you deny? They will have fruits, dates, and pomegranates. Then which of your lord's majesties will you deny? In them there will be wives, noble and gorgeous.
So thank you, Mariam, for reading out this translation for us. So you can see that we are coming to the concluding part of the surah, and that concluding part of the surah is again telling us that people of paradise, they'll be given 2 more orchards. So the previous section mentioned 2 orchards, and if you compare the characteristics of these 2 abodes, or these two residences, if I may say, you'll find almost as if the first part is referring to your own residence, if you're living in a place which is thickly populated, or maybe amongst other people. And this picture of paradise, which you've just now read, it refers to your countryside abode. So it is as if each person will have two houses or two places of residence, one in a city sort of a thing, which is more urban, and one in the countryside, and both will have their own gifts, the same things, but in a different manner. So you remember in the previous one, it was said that there would be two fountains. Again, it is said that there will that besides those two fountains and there's two orchards, there will be another group of two orchards, and they will be thickly and luxuriantly green, which of course gives this picture that they would be on the countryside or located in the countryside, and gushing fountains will water them, and there will be all kinds of fruits meant to savor our taste buds. And again, there will be wives noble and gorgeous, which of course again is another emphatic way of the Quran, that wherever you go, you'll have your companions with you, and the Almighty would make your emotional and your physical and your psychological needs being met in paradise as well. Okay, so this is now the concluding part, or we are reaching the concluding part. So it says, فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ حور مقصورات في الخيام فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان لم يطمثهن إنس قبلهم ولا جان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان متكئين على رفرف خضر وأبقري حسان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان.
Then which of your lord's majesties will you deny? Fair maidens residing in tents, then which of your lord's majesties will you deny? Neither men nor jinn would have touched them before. Then which of your lord's majesties will you deny? They will recline on green sheets of cloth and beautiful unique carpets. Then, O jinn and men, which of your lord's majesties will you deny?
Thank you, Maria, for this reading. Again, my dear friends and participants, you can see how the motif which was introduced, or the theme which was introduced, is continuing, and the presence of fair maidens, or again the companions, is once again brought into discussion. And the fact that they will be untouched is referring to their virginity, or the fact that no jinn or man would have touched them, which means that they will be created afresh. And of course, the part which always is relished by all of us is that if we are sitting in a countryside, then it's like sitting in your lawn, maybe, or in an orchard in which there are all sorts of delicacies, like, for example, carpets which are being laid out. We have cushions and all things in which we are able to recline, on which we are able to recline. And you can see that how every single thing which is presented is then topped up by telling us that which of the majesties of your Lord will you deny, telling us that look, all these things have been created for mankind. Some of them you'll find in this world. So if you just make a mental note of how this surah began, that the surah began with the fact that the Almighty has created mankind and taught them the Quran. So both this creation of mankind and teaching of the Quran is a manifestation of His mercy. And then we saw how the day of judgment which is going to take place one day, is argued in favor of. And then we saw as if the day of judgment has arrived, and how the wrongdoers would be treated, and then later on how the righteous will be treated, and the paradise that will be given to them. We find the details of this paradise. They are rampant. They're all pervading in this surah, and we can see how clearly that we would have various companions, and of course orchards and fountains and everything that we would like for us, that any person wishes to when he or she is residing in the countryside. And the last surah, the last verse actually, which finishes off the surah, is now come up. It says, "Tabarak asmu rabbika zil jalali wal ikram."
Very blessed is the name of your majestic and glorious Lord.
Thank you, Manahil. So you can see that how the surah actually uh, brings itself to an end by finally giving this note of assurance that as far as God is concerned, He is majestic and glorious because of this huge phenomena of creativity that you can see. He has that is so very, very dominant before our eyes when we are living in this world. His majesty and His glory can be seen in the phenomena of nature which are actually serving us. And once we die and pass away, His majesty and glory again manifests itself in His justice. So people who are punished, of course, they are punished because of their bad deeds. Again, this is a part of God's justice, His plan of justice. And people who are rewarded again are rewarded because of the plan of the Almighty as far as doing whatever they did and being rewarded for that. So we finished reading Surah Rahman. It is one of the most enchanting surahs of the Quran. And if any one of you has would like to listen to its recitation, there are so many good reciters of the Quran who have specially read out the surah in various formats, and it's such beautiful. It's like music to the ears. If you read out the translation and at the same time the text as well, you'll find being motivated by the surah. So just to recap that the surah again, as you can see, is addressing basically the people of or the idolaters of Arabia. This is a Meccan surah. This surah again is something in which, for the first time, I mean, this is the only surah in which the jinn and men have been directly addressed in such a prominent way. Of course, there are other parts of the Quran in which the jinn have also been addressed and brought up, but this is one surah in which jinn and men have been addressed side by side. As you can see, the words, which of your Lord's majesty, O men and jinn, would you deny? It is as if they are being addressed. Okay, so if I may ask a few questions from you regarding what we have just read. The first thing that comes to my mind that I would like to ask you is that uh, can any one of you describe how and why does the Quran actually discuss the fact that the providence of the Almighty, the mercy of the Almighty, or what exactly, in other words, is the reason that the Almighty keeps on discussing the fact that this universe or this world has been created uh, uh, and mankind has been given so much to enjoy in this whole span of life. The star, the sun, the moon, all these phenomena of nature, they're all serving mankind. So, any one of you who would like to tell me, because that's what we have read in the surah as well, that why is the Almighty referring to this? That He has given you so much, He has favored you with so many things and given you so many things. So why does the Almighty brings this subject up? What's the purpose of this? So, for example, if God says that, well, look at the stars above you, look at the trees, look at the wind, look at the seas, the oceans, and how they are being created and they are put to your service. So it's like the Almighty telling us abundantly in the Quran that He is doing something for us, and His power of creativity, which is unfathomable. I mean, it has a manifestation, as the Quran has just said, a new manifestation at each instant. So why is it that the Quran keeps on emphasizing that the Almighty has given us so much? Why is that? Anything that comes to your mind?
It's to make everyone, especially the people that are currently on the wrong path, that there's a God out there and He is merciful and He's created a lot of things for us and we should be thankful for Him.
Absolutely. So this is Ariba or Fatma?
Ariba.
Ariba. Wonderful, Ariba. You have partly answered. There are actually two things that these phenomena point to. One, of course, is the fact that if this is how things have been created, then you have to realize that there is someone who has created them. So one of the reasons for pointing out all these phenomena is that don't think that these things have come into being without any external effort or of their own selves. Someone has created them, and that someone is God Almighty. But the thing which is stressed here, particularly in this surah, is that all these things have been given to mankind for a certain reason, and that is to hold them accountable, that if they have been blessed by the Almighty, if they have been given certain privileges, then they'll be held to account one day. So primarily it's the day of judgment besides God that this subject is often brought up. That when a being gives you something, and things are given to you not because you deserve them or you have earned them, but they are mere blessings of God. They have been just given to you. Then the purpose is that one day he'll ask you that how you use these phenomena, because he is not just someone who has created this world without any purpose. If he is a purpose, he's a purposeful God. Then if all these things are being given to us, and this of course not only includes these blessings that we find around us, it also includes the blessings that we find within us. For example, our talents, our abilities, and similarly the various faculties that we have, our eyes, our ears, our faculty of intellect. So all these are blessings of God. And one of the reasons that the Almighty points out to these blessings time and again, this is something you'll find so much in the Quran. And the reason is to make you realize that you'll be held accountable. You'll be held accountable for the eyes, for the ears, for your talents, for the phenomena of nature who are serving you. That what did you do in return for these favors? How did you behave when you got these favors? So you see, this is one of the reasons that you might want to note, because this is not just in this surah, but this is an often repeated motif in the whole Quran. The next question that comes to my mind that I'd like to ask you is that why is it that in this surah you find the jinn also addressed with such emphasis? And I did refer to this when I was explaining the initial part. So does anyone of you remember that? Well, what exactly is the reason that you find the jinn being addressed in such a way, as if every verse is directed towards both mankind and jinn kind? So does anything comes to your mind? Anything rings a bell? Amira, anything comes to your mind?
Sir, can you repeat the question? I had to leave the meeting because my phone powered off.
Okay, the question I posed was that this surah addresses jinn, and I did explain that it addresses the jinn as well. It addresses mankind and jinn kind, and the verse which repeats itself is فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ, which means, "O men and jinn, which of your Lord's majesties will you deny?" So why is it that the jinn have been brought up specifically, and not just once, but almost in every verse of this surah?
I think it's because jinn have also been given the choice of doing bad or good, just like humans have, and they were just like the Makkans were being led astray, so were the jinn. So they're also being addressed here, so that they can also be they can also realize that they've also been given these things from God.
Anyway, Amira, one of the points that you have made is correct, that because of the fact that the jinn have also been given this choice to choose between right and wrong, just as human beings have, so therefore they are also addressed. But a more important reason here is that the Quraysh actually invoked the jinn as well. So they had their contact with the jinn, and they also regarded them to be closer to God. At times they even worshipped jinn. So it's like telling them as well, that these Quraysh as well, that the beings that they worship, they are themselves they are being addressed by the Almighty, and they shall be also held accountable. So it's not just humankind, but mankind, but jinn kind as well. And the same jinn with whom these Quraysh would make a point to address, and they would think that their own soothsayers, their own astrologers, they contact them and bring all sorts of information to them. So yes, this is the second thing that has been brought into discussion. So if there is any question, please let me know. Otherwise, we'll end our today's session. And inshallah, again in the next session, we'll be back with a new surah. And do find time, if you can, to revise this surah, my dear friends and participants, because once you read it and then again you revise it, you'll find a lot of things that they remain in your mind, and they are part of your permanent memory as well. So thank you very much for being here with us. And until next Sunday, it is Khuda Hafiz and goodbye from your teacher.